Little less. There was once a little boy whose name was Lars, and because he was so little, he was called Little Lass. He was a brave little man, for he sailed round the world in a pea-shell boat. It was summer-time, when the pea-shells grew long and green in the garden. Little Les crept into a pea-bed, where the pea-stalks rose high above his cap, and he picked 17 large shells, the longest and straightest that he could find. Little Les thought perhaps that no one saw him, but that was foolish, for God sees everyone. Then the gardener came with his gun over his shoulder, and he heard something rustling in his pea-bed. "I think it must be a sparrow," he said. "Russ, Russ!" But no sparrows flew out, for Little Les had no wings, only two small legs. "Wait, I will load my gun and shoot the sparrows," said the gardener. Then Little Les was frightened and crept out on the path. "Forgive me, Mr. Gardener," he said. "I wanted to get some fine boats." "Well, I will this time," said the gardener. "But another time, Little Lass, you must ask leave to go and look for boats in the pea-bed." "I will," answered Lassie, and he went off to the shore. Then he opened the pea-shells with a pin, split them carefully in two, and broke small bits of sticks for the rowers' seats. Then he took the peas which were in the shells and put them on his boats for cargo. Some of the shells got broken, and some were made whole, and when all were ready, Les had 12 boats. Then he should not be boats, they should be large warships. He had 3 liners, 3 frigates, 3 brigs, and 3 schooners. The largest liner was called Hercules, and the smallest was called the Flea. Little Lassie put all the 12 into the water, and they floated as splendidly and as proudly as any great ship over the waves of the ocean. And now the ships must sail around the world. The great island over there was Asia, that large stone Africa, and the little island America. The small stones were Polynesia, and the shore from which the ship sailed out was Europe. The whole fleet set off and sailed far away over the parts of the world. The boats of the line steered a straight course to Asia, the frigates sailed to Africa, the brigs to America, and the schooners to Polynesia. But little Lasse remained in Europe and threw small stones out into the great sea. Now there was one on the shore of Europe, a real boat, his father's own, a beautiful white painted boat, and little Lassie got into it. Father and mother had forbidden this, but little Lasse forgot. He thought he should very much like to travel to some other part of the world. "I shall row out a little way, only a very little way," he thought. The Pea-Shell boats had traveled so far that they only looked like little specks on the ocean. "I shall seize Hercules on the coast of Asia," said Lassie, "and then row home to Europe." He shook the rope that held the boat, and, strange to say, the rope became loose. Dish, rash, a man is a man, and so little Lush manned the boat. Now he would row, and he could row, for he had rowed so often on the steps of home, when the steps pretended to be a boat and father's stick a big oar. But when little Lassie wanted to row, there were no oars to be found in the boat. The oars were locked up in the boathouse. Little Lassie had not noticed that the boat was empty. It is not so easy as one thinks to row to Asia without oars. What could little Lassie do now? The boat was already some distance out to sea, and the wind, which blew from land, was driving it still further out. Lassie was frightened and began to cry, but there was no one on shore to hear him. Only a big crow perched alone in the birch tree, and the gardener's black cat sat under the birch tree, waiting on to catch the little crow. Neither of them troubled themselves in the least about little Lassie, who was drifting out to sea. Ah, how sorry little Lassie was now that he had been disobedient and got into the boat, when father and mother had so often forbidden him to do so. Now it was too late. He could not get back to land. Perhaps he would be lost out on the great sea. What would he do? When he had shouted until he was tired and no one heard him, he put his two little hands together and said, "Good God, do not be angry with little Lassie." And then he went to sleep, For although it was daylight, old Nukumati was sitting on the shores of the land of Nod, and was fishing for little children with his long fishing rod. He heard the low words of little Lassie said to God, and immediately drew the boat to himself and laid little Lassie to sleep on a bed of rose leaves. Then Nukumati said to one of the dreams, "Play with little Lassie, so that he does not feel lonesome." It was a little boy dream, so little that he was less than Lassie himself, and he had blue eyes and fair hair, and a red cap with a silver band, and a white coat with pearls on the collar. He came to little Lassie and said, "Would you like to sail around the world?" "Yes," said Lassie in his sleep, "I would like to." "Come then," said the dream boy, "let us sail in your Pea-Shell boats, and we shall sail in Hercules, and I shall sail the Flea." So they sailed away from the land of Nod, and in a little while Hercules and the Flea were on the shores of Asia, away on the other end of the world, where the ice sea flows through the Bering Straits into the Pacific Ocean. A long way off in the winter mists they could see the explorer Norkenitskold and his ship Vega trying to find an opening between the ice. It was so cold, so cold. The great icebergs glittered strangely, and the huge whales now lived under the ice, for they could not make a hole through with their awkward heads. All around on the dreary shore there was snow, and snow as far as the eye could see. Little gray men in shaggy coats moved about, and drove small sleds through the snowdrifts, but the sleighs were drawn by dogs. "Shall we land here?" asked the dream boy. "No," said little Lassie. "I'm so afraid that the whales would swallow us up, and the big dogs bite us. Let us sail instead to another part of the world." "Very well," said the dream boy with the red cap and silver band. "It is not far to America." And at the same moment they were there. The sun was shining, and it was very warm. Tall palm trees grew in long rows on the shore and bore coconuts in the top branches. Men, red as copper, galloped over the immense green prairies and threw their arrows at the buffaloes, who turned against them with their very sharp horns. An enormous cobra had crept into the stem of a palm tree and threw itself over a little llama that was gazing at the foot. Naps! It was all over for the little llama. "Where shall we land?" asked the dream boy. "No," said little Lassie. "I'm afraid that the buffaloes will butt us, and the great serpent eat us up. Let us travel to another part of the world." "Very well," said the dream boy with the white coat. "It is only a little way to Polynesia." And then they were there. It was very warm there, as warm as a hot bath in Finland. Costly spices grew on the shores: the pepper plant, cinnamon tree, gingers, saffron, the coffee plant, and the tea plant. Brown people with long ears and thick lips and hideously painted faces hunted the yellow-spotted tiger among the high bamboos on the shore, and the tiger turned on them and struck its claws into one of the brown men, and all the others took flight. "Shall we land here?" asked the dream boy. "No," said little Lass. "Don't you see the tiger away there by the pepper plant? Let's travel to another part of the world." "We can do so," said the dream boy with the blue eyes. "We're not far from Africa." And as he said that, they were there. They anchored at the mouth of a great river where the shores were as green as the greenest velvet. A little distance from the river, an enormous desert stretched away. The air was yellow, and the sun shone so hot as if it would burn the earth to ashes, and the people were as black as the blackest jet. They rode across the desert on tall camels. The lions roared with thirst, and the great crocodiles with their gray lizard heads and their sharp white teeth gaped open out of the river. "Shall we land here?" asked the dream boy. "No," said the little Lois. "The sun would burn us, and the lions and crocodiles would eat us up. Let us travel to another part of the world." "We can go back to Europe," said the dream boy with the fair hair, and with that they were there. They came to a shore where it was all cool and familiar and friendly. There stood a tall birch tree with its drooping leaves. At the top sat the old crow, and at its foot crept the gardener's black cat. Not very far away was a house which little Lassie had seen before. Near the house There was a garden, and in the garden a pea bed with long pea shells. An old gardener with a green coat walked about and wondered if the cucumbers were ripe. Felix was barking on the steps, and when he saw little Lassie, he wagged his tail. Old Stenna was milking cows in the farmyard, and there was a very familiar lady in a check woolen shawl on her way to the bleaching green to see if her clothes were bleached. There was, too, a well-known gentleman in a yellow summer coat with a long pipe in his mouth. He was going to see if the reapers had cut the rye. A boy and girl were running along the shore and calling out, "Little lass, come home for bread and butter." "Shall we land here?" asked the dream boy, and he blinked his blue eyes roguishly. "Come with me, and I shall ask mother to give you some bread and butter and a glass of milk," said little Lassie. "Wait a little," said the dream boy. And now little Lassie saw that the kitchen door was open, and from within there was heard a low, pleasant frizzling, like that which he had heard when one of the yellow whisks of batter in a wooden ladle into a hot frying pan. "Perhaps we should go back to Polynesia now," said the little boy. "No, they were frying pancakes in Europe just now," said little Lassie, and he wanted to jump to shore, but he could not. The dream boy had tied him with a chain of flowers so that he could not move, and now all of the little dreams came about him, thousands and thousands of little children, and they made a ring around him and sang a little song. "The world is very, very wide, little lass, and though you've sailed beyond the tide, you can never tell how wide it is on the other side, little lass. You have found it cold and hard, little lass, but in no land is God not, little lass. Many men live here and there, but they all to God are dear, little lass. When his angel is your God, little lass, there is no harm can ever tide, even on the other side, where the wild beasts wander. But tell us now, where are you roam? Do not find the best is home of all the lands you've looked upon, little lass." When the dreams had sung their song, they skipped away, and Nukumati carried Lass back to the boat. Here he lay for a long time quite still, and he still heard the frying pan frizzling at home on the fire, and the frizzling was very plain. Little Lass heard it quite near him, and so he woke up and rubbed his eyes. There he lay in the boat where he had fallen asleep. The wind had turned, and the boat had drifted out with one wind and drifted in with another, while little Lass slept. And what Lass thought was frizzling in the frying pan was a low murmur of waves as they washed against the stones on the shore. But he was not altogether wrong, for the clear blue sea was like a great pan in God's sun with dry cakes all for good children. Little Lass rubbed the sleep out of his eyes and looked around him. Everything was the same as before, the crow in the birch tree, the cat on the grass, and the Pea-Shell fleet on the shore. Some of the ships had floundered, and some had drifted back to land. Hercules had come back with its cargo from Asia, the flea had arrived from Polynesia, and the other parts of the world were just where they were before. Little Lass could not know what to think. He had hid so often been in the grotto in the land of Nod, he did not know what tricks dreams can play. But little Lass did not trouble his head with such things. He gathered together his boats and walked up on shore to the house. His brother and sister ran to meet him and called out from the distance, "Where have you been so long, Lassie? Come home and get some bread and butter." The kitchen door opened, and inside was heard the strange frizzling. The gardener was near his gate, watering the dill and parsley and carrots and parsnips. "Well," he said, "where was little Lassie been so long?" Little Lassie straightened himself up stiff and answered, "I've sailed around the world in a Pea-Shell boat." "Oh," said the gardener. He had forgotten about Dreamland. But you have not forgotten it. You know it still exists. You know the beautiful grotto and that bright silver walls whose luster never fades, and sparkling diamonds which never grow dim, the music which never ceases to flow, the soft murmur through the sweet evening twilight. The airy fairy dances of the happy dreamland never grow old. Like the glorious stars above us, they are always young. Perhaps you have caught a glimpse of their ethereal wings as they flew around your pillow. Perhaps you have met the same dream boy with the blue eyes and fair hair, the one who wore the red cap with a silver band and the white coat with pearls on the collar. Perhaps it has taken you to see all the countries of the world and the peoples, the cold wastelands, the burning deserts, the many-colored men and the wild creatures in the sea and the wild woods, so that you may learn many things, but gladly come home again. Yes, who knows? Perhaps you also have sailed around the world once in a pea-shell boat.